So this is the critical moment of the game. This is why I chose this game for you guys. I would say this is one of the strangest sacrifices that I have ever seen in my entire life, 26 years that I've been playing chess. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is a woman chess grandmaster Adhiban, and today I want to analyze a very interesting game in a popular opening Italian game. So this game was played in World Team Championship in 2019. It was played between Grandmaster Adhiban from India and Grandelius Nils from Sweden. So let's dive into it. The reason that I chose this game for you guys is that, number one, this is a very popular opening that probably you play either as white or as black, or you have seen such positions before. And number two, there is a strange sacrifice in this game, which is really interesting, and I want you guys to find the move. So let's start the game. In this game, Adhiban is playing as white. He started with e4, Grandelius replied with e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, knight f6. Okay, so after bishop c4 there are two lines here, bishop c5 and knight f6. These are the main lines in this position. But here black chose to play knight f6. So white played d3, bishop c5, castle, d6, c3. So here we have Gioco Piano game, which is kind of like Italian game, bishop c4 and bishop c5, and it's a typical position. So black played h6, rook e1, castle, knight bd2, a5, which is an interesting move, knight f1, bishop e6. So if you play this line as white, you know that this maneuver is typical, and you usually want to transfer your queenside knight to the kingside. And the reason is the pawn is on c3, so you can't move the knight to his usual spot on c3. That's why this is a good move for white to get the knight to g3. So here black played bishop e6, bishop b5, knight e7. So black wants to do the same thing. He wants to transfer the knight to the king side, knight e7, and white pushed the pawn to d4. Notice that earlier white couldn't push the pawn to d4, obviously, because the bishop was hanging. But after bishop b5, white can push the pawn with tempo. And let's say in this position, if black doesn't move the knight, let's say black moves the rook to e8, here white can push the pawn, and after bishop b6, white can fork the bishop. What? So after d5 here, as you can see, black's pieces are under attack, and we call it the fork. So the pawn is attacking two pieces at the same time. So white is winning in this position. That's why black played knight e7, d4, e takes d4, pawn takes d4, and bishop b6. Another move here was bishop b4, but even after bishop b4, we could play bishop d2, and white is slightly better in this position. So black played bishop b6, knight g3, d5, e5, and here black played knight e4. So in this position, black wants to sacrifice a pawn in order to get a blockade on d5. Another move here for black is to play knight d7, but after knight d7, black's pieces are really passive, you know, on the first and second rank, so their pieces can't move out. So that's why black decided to sacrifice a pawn. Knight e4, knight takes e4, d takes e4, rook takes e4, and c5. c5 is another interesting move here, and the reason is the pawn on d4 is pinned. notice that we can't take the pawn. The queen is hanging on d1, so white can't take the pawn on c5. White moved the bishop to d3. The bishop is not doing anything on b5, so it's the right time to move the bishop back. And this bishop is looking at the king side, so he might have some chances to attack the castle later on. So black played bishop f5, rook f4, black exchanged the bishops, and he took the pawn on d4. Rook g4. Rook g4 is an interesting move. The idea is to pin the pawn on g7 so he can win the pawn on h6. And instead of rook g4, bishop d2 was another way to continue the game, but rook g4 is also a good move here. So black played queen d7. Obviously we can't take the pawn because the rook is hanging on g4. That's why white pushed the pawn. Not only he protected the rook, but also he cleared this square for his king. So black played queen e6, bishop d2, rook a d8, rook e1. As you know, whenever you play chess, you need to get all of your pieces into the game. So the rook on a1 was the last piece, and white wants to just get all of his pieces into the game, which is very important. And I have seen a lot of amateurs and even intermediate players, sometimes they forget about bringing their last piece to the game, which is usually the rook in the corner. So I highly recommend you guys that you need to get all of your pieces into the game, because let's say if you start attacking the king side without your rook, or start attacking the center without your rook, it means that you're not playing with a 5-point piece, and that really matters in the game. So after rook a d8, rook e1, and here black played knight f5, which is an interesting move. Another move here black could play is rook d5, but after rook d5, white could play knight h4. That's why black played knight f5. Now he's also covering this square. Okay, so this is the critical moment of the game. This is why I chose this game for you guys. I would say this is one of the strangest sacrifices that I have ever seen in my entire life, 26 years that I've been playing chess. And I want you guys to pause the video and find the best move for white. Okay, here white moved the bishop to g5, which is very interesting. If you analyze this position with computer might not suggest this move bishop g5, but I think when you're playing against a human, it has a psychological impact on your opponent. And when you put your bishop on g5, it seems that okay, I'm attacking the king side, and I'm gonna attack your rook. I have this idea to play bishop f6 and so on. So here, instead of bishop g5, computer likes to play b3 or rook f4, but bishop g5 I think is the best move in this position. Why? Because you're playing against a human being, so usually it's harder for people to defend the position. That's why we're not playing against computers, right? Computers don't have emotions, and against human, if you attack, they usually collapse under pressure. And this is very important, that human cannot defend the position for a long time. Yes, we do have some players that they can resist and defend the position very well, but usually I'm talking about most players, they don't like to defend the position. They usually like to attack. So that's why this is actually a very important tip for you guys. If you want to improve in chess, try to get the initiative, and you want to attack your opponent. You don't want to defend the position. Okay, anyway, after bishop g5, black accepted the sacrifice, knight takes g5. So white is down 2 points here because he sacrificed the bishop for a pawn. The queen is hanging on e6. He played queen c8 because he wanted to save the queen and the knight at the same time. Rook f4, a great move. The idea is to attack the knight. If the knight moves, we have one move, checkmate on h7. So after rook f4, the only move here for black to defend the position is to push the pawn to g6. Then white played g4, the knight is under attack. Knight e7, and this was a big mistake. The best move in this position for black is to play knight e3. Yes, you want to sacrifice your knight, because if white takes that knight, black can take back, and suddenly the queen will be in danger. And let's say after moving the queen to e2, black can play rook d2, and black is better in this position. So the best move here for white is to play queen b3 to keep an eye on f7, and black needs to protect the pawn, and this position is about equal. But in the game, black played knight e7 instead, which is not a good move. It's a blunder, and now white can just win the game. So white played queen g3, a great move. The idea is to transfer the queen to the king side so he can go for a checkmate on h7. So black played king g7, and here there is a forced checkmate. So white can checkmate in 6 moves. So queen h4, the idea is to check here, rook h8, rook f7. And here I want you guys to pause the video and find the best move for white. How can we win this position? So you have checkmate in just 5 moves in this position. Yes, the best move here is to play rook h7. Although if you play queen g3, you're still fine and you have an advantage. It's like your advantage is like +4 here. But rook h7 is the strongest move because you want to take the rook on h8. Nobody can help the rook, and if he takes your rook, you can take with the queen. The king is in check. The king goes here, and you have 1 move checkmate. And if the rook doesn't capture your rook, let's say if the king wants to escape, you can take the rook, check, knight g8, rook takes g8, check. If the king goes to e7, we have queen h7 checkmate. Notice that the knight is covering that square and the pawn is covering those squares. So, and if here the king takes the rook, we can check, and again we have a beautiful checkmate on f7. So that's why after moving the rook to h7, black just resigned. So I hope you guys enjoyed this game. This is a very instructive game and you can use this opening in your own games. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. And I'll see you soon. Take care.